getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. And for me, that was really hard. I know people who don't seem to get very uncomfortable about many things, but that's what held me back. And it matters because that's where you build your confidence. That's where you stretch, you learn, and you get comfortable with that cycle of trying things and failing and growing and stretching, because then you can develop your capacity to do more. It doesn't have to be dramatic or flashy. It's just take one step at a time. It's uncomfortable and it's okay.
Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we sit down with executive leaders to explore what leadership really means through the lens of their stories, their wins, their struggles, their vision, and their lessons along the way. I'm Ty Hammond, founder of One Mountain Leadership and creator of the True Leadership Approach, an awareness-based path that helps leaders shift their focus from what to do about their problems to how to grow from them. Whether you're just stepping into leadership or are well-seasoned and at the top of your game, your potential won't be realized following someone else's script, but you can draw insights from their stories and turn it into wisdom by putting it into practice in your own life. Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we explore the essence of leadership beyond tactics and performance by sitting down with executives to hear what matters most to them. I'm your host, Ty Hammond. Today's guest is Jennie Luke. Jennie is a seasoned operations and delivery executive with over 30 years of experience leading teams at the intersection of technology, leadership, and performance. As VP of Operations and Delivery at Span Digital and as a certified mindset leadership coach, she helps organizations scale with clarity, aligning people, process, and purpose to deliver meaningful results. Known for turning complexity into simplicity, Jennie blends strategic vision with grounded execution, empowering teams to perform at their highest potential. Whether guiding founders through growth or mentoring emerging leaders, she brings a rare ability to transform strategy into action and foster cultures of accountability, alignment, and authentic leadership. It's a pleasure for me to have Jennie on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, Jennie.
Thank you, Ty. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So I always start here with this question. Every leader, of course, every human being, we all have a beginning, and who we are as leaders at work and in life starts taking shape long before we advance to any position of executive leadership. I'm curious if you'd be willing to share who's someone from your early life or maybe an early experience that really shaped the kind of leader and person that you are today.
Great question, Ty. So I'd like to talk about an early experience. I didn't really have a mentor or an exposure to leadership or technology. I should say my parents as parents led, as parents, but I really didn't have a lot of exposure to technology like I work in today. And as a child, I remember being very driven and I always wanted more. And I always got it in my head. Somehow I got it in my head that I wanted to build a company, lead a team, grow that company. And so when I was 17 years old, I was a senior. I was like halfway through my senior year. I got a part-time job, and it was a product company that also sold software services and did training. I remember walking in and immediately I saw operational inefficiency. And I felt like, and this is where I didn't realize it at a time, the leadership in me was coming out professionally. I felt like I needed to do something about it. And I looked at it not from a critical standpoint, but more from its organizational clarity. Come to me right away that I can make this better and we can be more profitable. And that's when I recognized my superpower was unlocked, that I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I know how that was the first time I realized that my brain works differently and I see systems, efficiency, and most of all, most important is the potential in people to bring them together. Notice there's a problem and solve it together.
I really love that. I'm curious, what was it like for you in that moment to have that realization? It sounds like a really profound experience within that particular context to have that realization. How do you feel like, how was that initial realization?
Well, funny enough, because it was really my first time, I didn't even realize I was in it, but I was so energized and I was so motivated and inspired. Like it didn't even feel like work. It felt like fun.
I'm so glad I asked that follow-up question because it's a similar feeling that I have when I'm what I would just say like in my purpose.
Hmm.
It's a really powerful experience. And how do you feel like that experience informs how you show up as a leader today?
Um, so how I show up as a leader today, um, I think that's when I started learning to be number one, to be the example, to be a a good listener, because that's how I can find out what the problems and the issues really are, taking an analytical approach, looking for the facts. Um, and as a leader then and later on, I don't have to always make all the decisions, but I can gather info and I make sure I do a very good job of listening. And I do it with empathy, putting myself in other people's shoes, and with integrity.
Beautiful. Well, of course, in this podcast, we're exploring the essence of leadership, what I would call true leadership. Of course, that's going to mean different things to different people. What does true leadership mean to you? What makes a true leader in your eyes?
So I think a little bit of what I just mentioned about listening and being the example, but I also think that um, owning your mistakes, and not just owning your mistakes. Like if you mess up, I really believe like it's so important for yourself and for your team to own it publicly. You can use your lessons. There's the lesson itself where the mistake was made, and then the lesson of being the leader to show up and use it as teaching moments, so they get kind of two different perspectives of how to be a leader making a mistake and the actual mistake itself. And it's so incredibly powerful because when you share in that way as a leader, it creates connection, it builds trust, and it strengthens your team. And then I would also add, communicate with clarity, whether it's in conversation or in like people need a vision. You want to make sure that you're delivering that clearly, not vaguely, and that people know how to relate. Because if you have that clarity, the direction, your team will have confidence. And true leadership is not about being perfect. It's about being clear, being real, being connected, and being the example.
I love both of those, and of course that ownership piece is incredibly important. You made a point to say owning it publicly. I'm
Hmm.
I'm curious if you'd be willing to expound a little bit, say a little bit more about what ownership actually looks like when you're taking ownership and you're owning those mistakes. What does that actually look like?
So let me see if I can think of an example here. A good one. I've done it more than once. Giving the wrong direction. And a lot of times I see leaders, they want to be right. It's not about being right. It's about if you give the wrong direction and you need to pivot, then you should own up to, I made a mistake. I see a lot of leaders just say something and then say something later, and then the staff or the team feels like they did something wrong when actually you changed your mind or you made a mistake. So you just own it. And I think that's again where you build that trust with your team.
I really love it. There's a little distinction I make between accountability and ownership. That accountability is the ability to account, like the ability to say this happened.
Mhm.
Ownership, in a way, is just the absence of an excuse.
Mhm.
It's just saying this happened,
Yeah.
and potentially I'm sorry, but just sort of acknowledging reality, and to your point, just how incredibly powerful that is as a leader to show that, to model that, and to create that kind of culture in an organization and on a team. Of course, life and leadership is a path, shaped by fundamental turning points. You've already talked about one here, of course, that we encounter along the way. These turning points, they can be specific moments like the one that you mentioned early in our conversation, or they can occur over longer periods of time. Can you share about a time when you realized that your way of leading or living was no longer meeting the demands of work and life and real growth? was needed?
So I've got a few of those, but I'll pick what I think for me was goes pretty deep, and that was the challenge of not wanting to be vulnerable in front of other people. I didn't want to be vulnerable, letting people see me make mistakes. It was hard because here I am. Still a high achiever. I look successful on paper. I enter rooms with purpose and confidence. But when I was younger, I just felt like even though I appeared confident, sometimes I didn't think I was good enough. And I would push myself too hard. I wasn't kind to myself at times. I worried constantly. And I would repeatedly would go through cycles of burning out. And, I was afraid of people seeing me have self doubt of making mistakes publicly. And really, I was operating at like 80%, like great, but I still had that 20% of potential that I wasn't living up to. And I was a risk taker, but I was a calculated risk taker that avoided failure. And failure is where the growth happens. And so I was externally successful, but I was failing internally. And it didn't feel real good.
And so, what do you feel like you had to outgrow or let go of in order to grow beyond it? I mean, obviously, talking about ownership and owning your mistakes, you have moved beyond that. So, what did you need to let go of in order to begin to own those mistakes and show yourself more vulnerably?
So I'll tell you a story because this is one that hit me pretty strong that allowed me to go through a shift in my thinking. And I was always afraid to get up and speak publicly. I always wanted to, but I held myself back. And this guy spoke beautifully in front of everyone. And I went up to him and I just said, what a great job, his words, how meaningful it was, how much I got from it, and the value, and everybody around me. And then I made this comment and I said, and you're not even nervous. And he looked at me and he goes, nervous? I'm always nervous. I'm always nervous every time of all the years, 30 plus years of getting up on stage. I've always been nervous and I step out there. But the difference is I know I'm capable. So I walk out with confidence in my capability because I have a message to deliver and I'm nervous at the same time. And so I'm telling you this story because I was always waiting to feel ready and I didn't want to make a mistake. And instead, I overcame it knowing that I can do whatever the task is and be nervous or be fearful. And that's okay. And it's actually supposed to be that way because when you get on the other side of discomfort, that's where you build your confidence.
Well, I imagine that so many of the people listening to this, I think we all know that public speaking is like, have you heard the number one, the number one fear, right? So hopefully anybody who is having a challenge with that is able to hear that wisdom here today. How did that, which sounds like a pretty major turning point, how does that have an impact on how you lead today?
Because I show up as myself. I show up authentically. I have real conversations. Um, I want to say that I don't worry about what other people think in a harmful way, because I do make sure what I say, my messaging is good, my communication is good, but I'm not showing up in fear. I'm showing up more powerfully and knowing that there's something I'm going to learn from a conversation that about to happen. And I don't make everything be about myself. So it's really just showing up authentically as a leader and being open.
Of course, leadership is what we're shaping for tomorrow. I'm curious to hear with the insights that you've shared today, and obviously all of the growth. What's your vision for your leadership, your legacy, or the impact that you want to have in the years ahead?
So it's really helping leaders, high achievers, entrepreneurs, emerging leaders, people wanting to step into leadership, helping them get unstuck so they can get to that next level where they can stop getting out of their own way, and they can take aligned action with the goals and objectives they're trying to achieve. And if helping them live up to their potential and with clarity, because it multiplies my impact, the investment I make in others and teaching them these tools and strategies, and then they in turn can do the same. And yeah, I don't want people to wait as long as I did for learning these lessons. And so I'm always making myself available to help people out, no matter what part of the company that they work in, no matter what their role is, because everybody's worth it, and their potential, it's there right now. It's not next year or when you finish a degree or when you finish a milestone. Your potential is always sitting in front of you, waiting for you to unwrap it and take that step.
Well, that's so powerful. Your company is incredibly fortunate to have you. Of course, any person that truly champions, especially, and I heard your comment there about no matter where you are in the company, I could see you showing up in that way. It's apparent is you're committed to your own growth as much as you are, the growth of others. Thinking about your journey over the last few years, what's really been the most valuable investment that you've made in yourself and for your own growth?
So if I have to think about one of the things that I did was most value investment in myself, and I think I spoke of it a little bit earlier, is getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. And for me, that was really hard. I know people who don't seem to get very uncomfortable about many things, but that's what held me back. And it matters because that's where you build your confidence. That's where you stretch, and you grow. You fail, but failure is not a bad thing. You learn and you get comfortable with that cycle of trying things and failing and growing and stretching. And you develop that, you know, I want to say perseverance, grit, and resilience, but I don't actually wave that flag around anymore. I'm more about, I think it's more powerful to be consistent and take action, because then you can develop your capacity to do more. It doesn't have to be dramatic or flashy. It's just take one step at a time. It's uncomfortable and it's okay.
I'm going to ask you to riff a little bit on that, the comfortability with the unknown, or where are you feeling the most uncomfortable now? In other words, where's your own growing edge in this moment? Where do you feel the most tested, uncomfortable right now? What challenges are stretching you the most in leadership in life currently?
So that is a very interesting question, and I'm happy to share, what I'm going through right now, which is very surprising, as a leader, that resistance. I've noticed over the last few years, I'm having resistance in maybe trying new things or coming up with excuses. And even though I lead others, I'm going through challenges myself and obstacles. So sometimes it's hidden and I don't even realize it. But it could be trying something new. It could be I'm doing something uncomfortable and I'm noticing a resistance, or I'm really good about working in the trenches. And then when you get out and you need to do the finisher work, I'll find myself resisting because I don't need to do that right now. I'll do it later. And so that's what I'm working on right now is where am I experiencing and feeling resistance in my life? Why is that happening? And kind of breaking that down so I can understand it better so I can improve myself.
What are the ways that you imagine that you most need to grow in order to meet these challenges as you? Because I feel like this is a really powerful, for myself as well. Yeah, trying new things, meeting that. It's one thing to build that confidence in a place where you once were comfortable. You can look back, but as you sort of meet something else, and what I'm really hearing you saying is to develop that confidence around particularly new things. So,
Yes.
what is the way? What is the growth that you feel like that's needed there? What would be helpful for you to meet that edge?
So I have another story. So What is helpful for me? It's like a game. I used to set New Year's resolutions. I still have goals for the year, but I decided every month I am going to do something that I've never done before in my life. And I've been doing this for a very long time. And it's probably been the best thing I can do because I will find myself, there's work related things like getting up and making that public speech and not wanting to do it, feeling that resistance and feeling uncomfortable. And then there's like, I wanted to fly in a helicopter, but I was too afraid. And so each month when I'm faced with a situation, I I move forward and I experience that discomfort, and I always find that there's growth that comes from it. And sometimes it's better, a lot of times it's work related issues, and sometimes it's something else. But that's what makes you more well-rounded, and I think gives you the capability and capacity to handle more things. It makes you stronger.
Well, such powerful wisdom to share there. And this last question is a little bit more of an invitation. So you have the time and the space here to offer to our listeners whatever it is that's most in your mind and heart to share right now. Anything at all. Take your time. The floor is yours.
So what I would say is we're all just here figuring things out. No matter what role you're in, what industry you're working in, no matter what your circumstances are, everybody is unique. And I think if we can remember that we, like ourselves and those around us, are all trying to figure things out, we're just trying to navigate life. We're all doing it together. And to have the awareness that that is happening, I think is very powerful. It's a very powerful thought when you're thinking about those people who are around you.
Well, Jennie Luke, I appreciate so much the wisdom that you've shared here today with me. I've really gotten so much out of it. And I'm sure that whoever listens to this is equally going to benefit from what you've shared here today. Thank you so much for being our guest on the True Leadership Podcast.
Thank you, Ty. This was so much fun.
That's it for this episode of the True Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this to catch future episodes. This conversation was brought to you by One Mountain Leadership, where we help leaders grow the capacity, confidence, and presence of true leadership through the True Leadership approach. To learn more about the approach, our offerings, our community, and how we can help you realize your potential in both leadership and in life, visit us at onemountainleadership.com.